sa sarili lamang. Walang sino man ang namamatay para sa sarili lamang. Tayong lahat ay may pananagutan sa isa't isa. Tayong lahat ay tinipon ng Diyos na kapiling niya. Sa ating pagmamahalan at paglilingkod sa kanino man, tayo ang magdadala ng balita ng kaligtasan. Tayong lahat ay may pananagutan sa isa't isa. Tayong lahat ay tinipon ng Diyos na kapiling niya. Sabay-sabay ngang mag-aawitan ang mga bansa. Tayo'y tinuring ng Panginoon bilang mga anak. Tayong lahat ay may pananagutan sa isa't isa. Tayong lahat ay tinipon ng Diyos na kapiling niya.
Nabubuhay para sa sarili lamang. Walang sino man ang namamatay para sa sarili lamang.
Tayong lahat ay may pananagutan sa isa't isa. Tayong lahat ay tinipon ng Diyos na kapiling niya. Tayong lahat ay tinipon ng Diyos na kapiling niya.
Tayong lahat ay may pananagutan.
"2021 is proving to be another year of trepidation, but the Catholic Church, through Caritas Philippines, is bringing you more reasons to be hopeful because we are leaving no one behind." Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines, the stewardship program of Caritas Philippines responding to 9 priority actions, our manifestation of being gifted to give, here at Caritas Philippines Facebook page. Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines.
It's a wonderful night, it's a wonderful day, lalong-lalo na po that we are here in Cotabato City Isa ito sa mga pinaka-highlight ng ating accompaniment program, accompaniment visits to 14 Diocesan Social Action Center since October 3, 2021. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Ako si Jing Ray Henderson and this is ALAY KAPWA sa Caritas, Philippines.
And ako naman po si Annalyn Julian at nagsasabi po ngayong gabi na magandang gabi at alam po natin espesyal itong gabi na to kasi makakasama po natin ngayong gabi ang isa sa mga haligi ng Caritas Philippines ng social action ng buong Pilipinas. Jing?
Yes! Parang ang layo natin, ano?
Kaya ang hirap magsalita na nakatakip ang bibig. Yan. So, pero kailangan talaga natin.
Yes. Kumusta po kayong lahat dyan? Huwag kayong aalis dahil syempre hindi din kami paaawat dito sa ating mga pag-uusapan. We are going to parang go back to the memory lane. To go back to memory lane. Kasi history yung ating pag-uusapan ngayong gabi, lalong-lalo na talagang napaka-importante din ng ating mga pag-uusapan. All throughout the accompaniment visit dito sa Mindanao, ang issue, ang concern sa peace building ay isa sa mga hindi nawawala doon sa ating mga pinag-uusapan, Ate Annalyn. Kaya po, nakakatuwa at saka we are really honored that tonight, makakasama po natin isa sa mga haligi, hindi lamang ng social action, kundi ng haligi ng peace building efforts, lalong-lalo na po dito sa Mindanao at saka sa buong mundo. Kaya, ano nga ba ang tunay na storya at history ng peace building efforts natin dito? Papaanong nagkaroon ng BARRM? Papaanong nagkaroon ng pakikipagsalamuha, yung interaction na mas maigi ng mga Katoliko, ng mga Kristiyano at ng ating mga kapatid na Muslim. Yan ang ating mga pag-uusapan ngayong gabi. Kaya dyan lang po kayo, saan man kayo sa Pilipinas at sa buong mundo, samahan ninyo kami sa loob ng isang oras. Makakasama natin for the first part of our program, walang iba po kundi ang Archbishop Emeritus ng Archdiocese of Cotabato, walang iba kundi si Cardinal Orlando Quevedo. Magandang gabi sa iyo, Cardinal. And so honored talaga. Ako parang starstruck pa ako hanggang ngayon na katabi na natin siya at nakilala na natin personally.
Actually, privilege, Kasi dati nababasa lang natin sa history,
Yes.
Naririnig, napapanood.
Correct.
Pero eto na, pwedeng hawakan.
Pasalitain na natin siya.
Bishop?
Kumusta ka po, Bishop? Cardinal? And kumusta yung
Good
pag-stay
evening.
mo dito?
Good evening, everyone. And I'm happy that NASA Caritas has come to Cotabato to see firsthand the situation. And I thank you for helping in the training of our social action staff for Cotabato. They are Cotabato is part of the BARRM, Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao. And so our partners are Muslims and indigenous peoples, the partners of social action.
Oo, Gino, konting trivia lang. Ang naaalala ko kay Cardinal Quevedo ay yung pag nagbibigay tayo ng bosaw, hindi mo mababanggit yung kanyang schema for social action, paano ba magiging genuine, authentic na naglilingkod tayo sa ating mga komunidad. Talagang isang haligi, kaya sabi nga natin, yung first leg, last leg sa first leg. Ang gulo,
Dito sa
yung sinasabi po namin, ito po yung first leg namin sa pag-ikot dito sa Mindanao and last yung Cotabato sa first leg. Yan.
And it's very fitting to end kung
Yes.
saan nagsimula almost yung lahat ng mga yung history ng social action. Before we really dwell into the peace building process po dito sa Mindanao, Cardinal, gusto lang din namin malaman po, kanina tinanong ko na ito sa iyo off the air, how is it leading the social action network during that time when parang nagsisimula pa lang ang lahat, wala ngang simula, parang hindi pa stable ang lahat?
Established.
Yeah. The Social Action Center in Cotabato City, in the Archdiocese of Cotabato, was quiet during the days of the peace process, continued to work with NASA it continued to do its work with Muslims and Christians, but not really towards the peace process. It was humanitarian service for indigenous peoples and Muslims. On my part, the BARRM arose from decades of the peace process between the MILF and the government. It was revolutionary armed forces that went for secession. And when the MNLF established peace with the government, with Nur Miswari, the MILF continued to fight for a separate Muslim state until such time as the chair, Hashim Salamat, the chair decided that his vision would be now no longer a secessionist separate Islamic state, but a part of the government, the territory of the Philippines, which would be for Muslims only, for their own development and their own form of government. That was his dream. And the Murad, now that was his name,
Yes.
Now Ahad Ibrahim decided to follow the vision of Hashim Salamat and began fighting until such time for a Muslim territory that would be very restrictive already, and then finally the comprehensive peace agreement between government and the MILF was signed. And the peace agreement that was signed was the beginning of the BARRM.
Yeah. And Cardinal, doon sa process na to, I know that you are parang an advocate talaga noong dialogue. Papaanong nagsimula po na nag-involve ang church doon sa peace process, is not only influencing yung Mindanao peace process, but even yung mga katabi nating bansa in Asia?
Yeah, it was more or less like I was like a voice in the wilderness among the Christians, because if one talked about the peace process and Christians, it's really the peace process and myself.
Yeah.
Because Christians in general were against the MILF idea of a separate territory for them. So my role in the peace process between government and the MILF was more or less low profile, behind the scenes. One of the peace panels would come to see me and ask to consult me about some issue that was posing a possible impasse. And I would make suggestions on how to go about it, and then the other peace panel would come here, would ask me questions also about what my ideas were, and then that was more or less and I would pray for them if they had a peace meeting in Malaysia, and they would separately ask me for prayers, and so I would, and then perhaps during one of those discussions in Malaysia, one would text me about a question that they are trying to solve. And I would give my own advice. So that was more or less my role. Not directly involved in the peace process, but acting as a consultant or as an advisor behind the curtains.
Pero how do you do that? Being behind, maintaining your position behind the curtains, and parang praying and then providing advice, if yung sinasabi din po ninyo na the problem in Mindanao, the root cause of all this are actually 3 types of injustice which you enumerated. Pwede po bang parang pakipaliwanag sa amin, especially sa mga millennials ngayon na hindi na alam kung ano yung nangyari in the past? How do we bridge something that is so rooted, deeply rooted in injustice and make it something more parang pwede mong himay-himayin at pag-usapan without causing any debate and any yung mahirap na arguments?
Yeah. The approach of government to the peace process was one of the cause of the conflict was one of poverty among the Muslims, and we need to answer that with development. But my analysis of the problem went further than that. So I identified 3 injustices that had to be addressed by government. Injustice with regard to their identity, their sovereignty, their development, their culture. Those 3 injustices. And my historical analysis go back to the time before the Spaniards came.
Yes.
When they held territory all over Mindanao and even as far as Manila. And when Salcedo came, he found a king, 2 kings there who were Muslim kings, Lakandula, and I don't know why Raja Muda comes to my mind. Maybe he's one of them. Anyway.
Was it also Raha Sulaiman?
Sulaiman.
Ay, umaalag mo pa yung history class ko.
Okay. So I said this. In order to address the conflict, you have to address the root causes. And the root cause is not simply poverty. You have to address the injustices to their identity and their sovereignty, their territorial integrity, and their cultural, and then development would be the last. And subsequent peace panels began looking at those. And those were when the questions were coming into see me. And that's how I worked out the peace process. I think the Moro Islamic Liberation Front recognized my role, as well as the government with the former OPAP chair, Secretary Duresa, and then later also Garcia, General Garcia, and then OPAP Dingdeles, and now the cessation for hostilities is Carlito Galvez, General Carlito. They acknowledge my help in those things.
Yeah, opo.
Jing, bago tayo magpatuloy, meron lang akong parang curious question kasi if I remember it right, dun sa ating history, di ba? Ang sabi, ang mga lumads, yun talagang mga original, no? Mostly sila yung nanirahan dito sa Mindanao.
Yeah.
Before pa dumating yung Islam and the Christians. And then dun sa pag-evolve hanggang dun nagka-war, hanggang ngayon, Bishop, ay Cardinal, paano po, nasaan po ang mga lumad dito sa BARRM? At simula pa nung, kasi like naalala ko nung doon sa BBL, di ba, isa sila doon sa, nagpunta sa Manila, nag-protest, ganyan. Paano po yun, Cardinal, yung sitwasyon ng ating mga lumads?
The Bangsamoro Organic Law has a special section on the rights and development of the Lumads, of the indigenous peoples. And I had to ensure somehow by lobbying or by writing that there is a special act for the indigenous peoples. Forget it should be mentioned there, that these fundamental rights that have been acknowledged by the Muslims and by the indigenous peoples and government should be mentioned there. They should not be simply taken for granted. And so it was put there. And in monitoring the implementation of the BOL and through the BTA, the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, to monitor them, there are two concerns I have. The assurance that the fundamental rights and the property rights and ancestral domain of both the indigenous peoples and the settler communities would be assured, would be protected, and not disregarded, and marginalized, so that they belong to the Bangsamoro territory. They are not Bangsamoro, but they belong to the Bangsamoro, but therefore the Bangsamoro BTA, which is by BOL, dominated by the MILF, should take those fundamental rights to property and their safety and their development into consideration. Monitoring, that will be important. I think that's the work of the group now of the Christians, the Christians for Peace movement or settler communities. And this Christians for Peace movement is not only for Christian settlers, but for all settler communities like Hindus, mga Bombay, Indians, Chinese, or be like that.
Cardinal, doon sa nilakad nung ating mga efforts, of course, we would like to recognize that the Catholic Church is not the only one, and it may not also have the major role in making sure that BARRM happens, diba? Pero for the Catholic Church's part, from that point when we started talking about peace building up to now, what changed? Meron ba bago dun sa strategy natin, sa messaging natin, doon sa the way we talk with or the way we interact with the government?
Yeah. I think the main role now is not so much interreligious dialogue for peace between Muslims and Christians, but intra-religious dialogue, meaning to say the Muslims must dialogue among themselves towards peace. And the main concern I have is the mutual biases and prejudices that exist among the Muslims against Christians and among the Christians against Muslims. And therefore, intra-religious dialogue among the Christians should take place, so that those biases and prejudices that we have against the other would be either reduced or completely made inoperative in practical life, in daily life. The same thing is true with the Muslims. And that's the main agenda that I would have these days.
Kasi totoo talaga yun, Jing, di ba? Like, yung bakit merong MNLF, merong MILF, no? Kumbaga, among them then meron silang mga hindi nare-resolve na mga prinsipyo, just like sa ating mga Kristiyano, ganun din. Kaya tama yung sinabi ni Bishop na yung intra-religious dialogue.
And sa ngayon, Cardinal, paanong pumapasok yung role naman? Kasi what we have been talking about is like the role of the church in general. Pero paanong pumapasok naman yung role ng social action? Like in your time with the National Social Action, and then also here in the Archdiocese, ano yung role na meron tayong ginagampanan ngayon?
Well, there are three ministries in the Archdiocese that I believe should take the leading role in this intra-faith dialogue. These are the Ministry for Interreligious Dialogue. I think Father Cliff is part of that, together with an oblate. Then there is Ministry for Indigenous Peoples. Also, I think there's an oblate in charge. And then the Ministry for Social Action, and that's Father Baira. So he is in charge of two ministries that should spearhead the idea of intra-faith dialogue. What I thought should take place would be for these three ministries to work together and go and talk with the parish priest and talk with the people. But actually, the parish priest should take the lead, and they should be trained on how to do this. Whether or not that is taking place, I'm not in touch with the.
Mamaya itatanong po natin kay Father Clifford.
Yes, correct.
Mag-uulat si Father Clifford mamaya.
Yes, opo. Cardinal, I think for maybe our last question for you for tonight, yung kasi sinasabi mo ever since you started talking about peace building in Mindanao and the whole of the Catholic Church even, isa sa mga sinasabi mo po is the dialogue of life. Paano siyang dapat na isa sa buhay din natin, or paano siyang i-integrate doon sa daily natin na pamumuhay, in a sense, because sabi mo nga po, at we recognize also the fact na yung peace building is not only kailangan doon sa mga areas na merong conflict. Even at home, we have to do peace building most of the time. So, paano pong nangyayari yung dialogue of life?
The peace building process that I talk about is the peace building among the heads of political groups or revolutionary forces, the heads. That dialogue for peace should be brought down to the level of daily life among ordinary Christians and Muslims and indigenous peoples. And that takes place only when there are those three sectors of society together, like in Cotabato City, in the rest of the BARRM territories, in Lanao del Sur, many Christians, Muslims, indigenous peoples in Suru-Tawi-Tawi, Basilan area. Here in Cotabato City, you take a jeep and you sit down with Muslims and Christians together. And one has to be very respectful and act like a brother or a sister of these other peoples of other faiths there. And help one another and so on. No. And that's being done. That's being done. If there is any bias or prejudice there, it is deep inside and it's not shown. It's except when there is something really crucial in daily life that takes place, then it comes out. The best example of the dialogue of life, to me, would be students in Notre Dame schools. Notre Dame University, in the Notre Dame schools where there are Muslims, especially in Sulu and Tawi-Tawi, and in the place called Dato Piang, where most of the students are Muslims. The Notre Dame University is about 60% Muslim. And so one can say that there they study together, they pray together before and after class, and they play together. And sometimes they fall in love with one another. You know. So when you see Notre Dame students, Notre Dame University, here also at Notre Dame Girls Department, RVM College, Notre Dame of Cotabato, the boys there with the Maris brothers, you see them and they're holding hands with one another, boys, girls, and as though They're really brothers and sisters, one another. That's the best example that I have of dialogue of life in the school context. In the marketplace, you see them. Our cook, I think our cook, suki niya, in the market is a Muslim. So they're friends. No? They don't show any bias or prejudice ordinarily.
So the key is respect.
Respect,
Love.
yeah. Respect, understanding, openness, and eventually, one could say love. Yeah.
Yeah. At saka ang lahat ng ito mangyayari if we communicate with sincerity
Yes.
doon sa bawat isa.
Yeah.
Because if not, then all peace-building efforts will fail kapag hindi maayos yung ating pakikipag-usap sa bawat isa. Cardinal, maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon na binigay mo sa amin na makasama ka dito sa ating programa. It's really an honor and we are hoping to have you have your presence more sa Caritas Philippines, especially now that we are really venturing into another parang bagong proseso sa Caritas Philippines din and then the whole social action network. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng ginawa mo, not only for Mindanao, not only for the social action, but also for the whole Catholic Church in the Philippines.
Thank you very much too for this evening of 30-minute discussion and presentation. I hope it has been very helpful to our listeners. My only closing remark would be this. Most Christians live in non-Muslim areas in the Philippines. It's only in the south and a corner of the south. So how is a dialogue of life undertaken there where there are practically no Muslims or small minority? You begin at home. Your home should be a home of dialogue between parents and children. Respect your children, love your children. Children, love your parents, respect your parents. And dialogue, and not by imposition of will on the other, but dialogue. That's how a dialogue of life could take place in a predominantly Christian area among the Christians themselves. Thank you very much once again. Enjoy your stay here.
We are enjoying Cardinal. Maraming salamat po. Once again, nakasama natin His Eminence, Orlando Cardinal Quevedo. Ang Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines will be back after this reminder.
2021 is proving to be another year of trepidation, but the Catholic Church, through Caritas Philippines, is bringing you more reasons to be hopeful because we are leaving no one behind. Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines, the stewardship program of Caritas Philippines responding to 9 priority actions, our manifestation of being gifted to give here at Caritas Philippines Facebook page. Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines.
I wear a mask because
I wear a mask because
I wear a mask to protect my special child.
I wear a mask because I want to protect myself, my co-workers, and my clients.
Nagsusulot ako ng mask para suportahan ang sarong COVID-free na komunidad.
I wear a mask because my child still can't.
magsuot kog mask aron dili ko matakdan o dili ko makatakod sa uban.
Nagsuot ako ng mask para iwas sa virus.
I wear a mask because I want to be part of the solution and I care.
I wear a mask because I want to protect myself, my family, and others. And loving is caring.
Nagsulot ako ng mask kay gusto ko na mahunong ang pandemic.
I wear a mask because palangga ko kamo. 我戴口罩，因為咁樣係公義。I wear a mask because it's an act of justice.
Nagsuot ko og mask tungod kay mask, mag-alay sa kapwa. Mask, mag-atiman sa katawhan.
Nagsuksok ako sa mask para malikawan ang paglabtas ng COVID virus.
I wear a mask because I want to live longer and serve more people.
I wear a mask because I care and it works.
I wear a mask because bilang proteksyon sa mga mahal ko sa buhay.
Nagausar ako sa mask hindi lang para sa kaugalingon ko kundi para sa iban.
I wear a mask because prevention is better than cure.
I wear a mask because it's a mask.
Isang paalala mula sa Caritas, Philippines.
2021 is proving to be another year of trepidation, but the Catholic Church, through Caritas Philippines, is bringing you more reasons to be hopeful because we are leaving no one behind. ALAY KAPWA sa Caritas Philippines, the stewardship program of Caritas Philippines responding to 9 priority actions, our manifestation of being gifted to give here at Caritas Philippines Facebook page. ALAY KAPWA sa Caritas Philippines.
Yan. Tayo po'y nagbabalik sa ALAY KAPWA sa Caritas Philippines at ngayon naman po matapos ang yung pakikipag usap natin sa sa isa sa mga haligi ng ating social action network, yung Caritas Philippines. Ngayon naman ay kakausapin naman natin yung isang tao na talagang ngayon naman ay nagpapatuloy nung mga nasimula ni Cardinal Quevedo dito sa Archdiocese ng Cotabato. So Jean, pakilala mo na.
Yes, Papa, gusto po namin ipakilala sa inyo makakasama natin ngayong gabi din. Siyempre sa second half ng ating programa, walang iba kundi ang Social Action Center Director ng Archdiocese ng Cotabato, Archbishop, sorry po. Father Clifford Baira. Magandang gabi, Father. Kumusta?
Magandang gabi sa ating mga host ngayon, si Ma'am Jing, Ma'am Annalyn, at sa ating mga viewers, national and international audience natin. And it's good to be here and to be part of this question and answer na merong katugunan dito sa mga ginagawa natin sa Social Action Center, especially dito sa Central Mindanao, at the heart of the Bangsamoro Autonomous in Muslim Mindanao.
Yes, okay. Father, just to put the context doon sa ating pag-uusapan, kasi kanina si Cardinal Quevedo already provided us with the historical background ng mga efforts ng simbahan towards peace building. And again, doon sa ating mga nanonood ngayon, we are not saying that it's only the Catholic Church. Sabi ko nga kanina, we may not have done the bulk of the efforts, di ba? Doon sa ating mga ginagawa. But just for this discussion, we would like to highlight the efforts of the Catholic Church in doing or in the peace building process. Especially of kumusta na yung BARRM natin as of the moment, okay? Because we know, especially for the city of Cotabato, and then for this region, medyo malaki yung ginawa na effort ngayon, especially for the extension and all ng ating simbahang Katoliko dito. So, Father Clifford, just to give us also parang a background muna, when ARMM papuntang BARRM, ano yung role ninyo dito?
Okay. So, magandang gabi ulit sa ating lahat. Kanina narinig natin ang pagpapahayag ng ating mahal na Cardinal tungkol sa kanyang role dito sa usapin ng pangkapayapaan sa Central Mindanao. At of course, Cardinal helped also a lot bilang leader ng Catholic Church, but we do recognize that this is not the sole effort of the Catholic Church, but it's the effort of the MILF, the MNLF, at ng government, no, of the Republic of the Philippines. Kung si Cardinal ay nagkaroon ng role na tinatawag naming vertical, no, vertical ang kanyang role, meaning to say, nagkaroon siya ng malaking influence doon sa Senado, no, doon sa office ng ating presidente, doon sa Kamara, at sa mga national heads, no, ng lahat ng mayroong kaugnayan dito sa peace process. Yun ang naging role ni Cardinal. At actually, he was able to set up itong tinatawag na Friends of Peace. These are people outside of the BARRM na tumulong doon talaga sa mga pag-uusap-usap upang mabuo yung isang layunin na ang government effort at saka ang MILF effort ay magkaroon ng katugunan. At yun ang naging papel ng Catholic Church. At then, kami naman dito sa baba, Social Action Center, ang role namin ay horizontal. Horizontal ang role namin. Una, sa pamumuno ng aming Christian leader by the name of Professor Edgar Ramirez, binuo namin yung tinatawag na Christians for Peace Movement, at ito ay binubuo ng institutional representations coming from the Catholic Church, Evangelical Church, Episcopal Church, at kami ay nagtipon upang pag-usapan namin yung tinatawag naming positive engagement. And during that time, hindi pa nangyari yung plebisito. Kaya isinulong namin yung principle of positive engagement, especially doon sa hierarchy ng MILF at MNLF. At binuo namin yung People's Agenda. Inikot namin itong mga regions sa buong BARRM. And we did a lot of capacity building, asking our people kung ano yung kanilang mga sentiments at saka ano yung mga gusto nilang ipaabot sa gobyerno na ito na ibubuo ng ating government, national government. At yun nga, nangyari nga ang malawakang campaign namin dito at nagkaroon kami ng 17-point agenda coming from the settler communities, at yun ay aming inihain doon sa 3 araw na malaking pagpupulong na ginawa namin with the hierarchy of the MILF. At nagkaroon kami ng kasunduan doon na once that the government ay ma-establish ito siya, kaming mga settler communities na nandito sa loob ng BARRM ay mabigyan kami ng tinatawag na inclusive participation. At totoo nga, hindi nasayang yung effort na ginawa namin dahil isa sa mga provision ng batas doon sa Bangsamoro Organic Law being ratified at nanalo yun, that the present government, the parliamentary government, shall establish the Office for the Settler Communities, and eventually, nai-enhance yun doon sa provision ng batas na tinatawag na Administrative Code ng Government of the Day. Kaya ngayon, hindi na sayang yung effort namin dahil as of this time, last August, ang Office for Settler Communities ay ibinigay sa amin. Sa grupo na ito, headed by our director, Sir Edgar Ramirez, at for the first time in the life of this community, ito ngayon, pronounced na ngayon at na-establish na, mayroon ng structure, at for the first time mag-ooperate ito with the government of the day. So ito ngayon yung magiging struktura, at alam namin na sa buong region na ito ng BARRM, mayroon tayong 6 na mga ecclesiastical areas na pwedeng maging kliyente ng opisina na ito, namely, ang part ng Bukidnon because of WAO, ang part ng Diocese of Cotabato because of the presence of those barangays included in the expansion during the plebiscite, and in the main areas of Marawi, Cotabato, Basilan, and Hulo. So hahanapin namin dyan ang mga settler communities sa buong region na yan, at yun ang magiging kliyente ng mga programa para sa ikabubuti ng pamahalaang ito, because we do believe that the positive contribution ng settler communities will be also credited to the government of the day. So ito yung dialogue process na ginagawa, dahil kami mga Christian dito ngayon na nagkaroon ng ganitong pananaw, we don't want to see ourselves as a passive, onlooker from a distance. We need to engage because we know that we have the government of the day, na yun ngayon ang inatasan ng ating national government to really do something for the good of the Muslim community. And this parliament is of course led by the MILF, but then we don't call them MILF anymore. We call them the government, because they are now running the government, called the parliamentary government, and we are part of that government. Kaya ito yung positive na pananaw namin na gusto naming ipaabot sa ating mga constituents, na alam ko na sabi ni Cardinal kanina, itong kwento ng divide na ito dito sa Central Mindanao ay galing ito sa malalim na historical injustice. Alam ko na maraming buhay ang ibinuhos nito ng MILF, ng MNLF, but not only them, we also Christians, nagkaroon din ng ganon. Yeah, and the IP community, ganon din, nagbuwis din ng buhay dito sa usaping ito. Kaya nga kami ngayon, alam namin na center doon sa Christian communities ang kliyente ng opisinang ito, but then we will try as much as possible, dahil we are just simply starting, also to include also the concerns of the IP communities, and of course the vulnerable sectors nandiyan sa palibot namin, and even to include also other Muslim communities.
So ibig sabihin, Father, bago yung tanong ko po, ano muna yung ibig sabihin ng settler communities?
Itong settler communities dito ngayon as defined, actually nagtulong din kami doon sa formulation ng settler communities na ito as defined now in the administrative code. Ito yung mga tao na nandito ngayon, na namuhay dito ngayon sa region na ito ng Bangsamoro, na galing ito sila doon sa Luzon at sa Visayas, and eventually nag-take root yung kanilang families dito, and eventually they decided to reside because eventually nagkaroon sila ng property at nandito na sila ngayon, and also that includes also other non-Muslim communities like Buddhist, like Shinto, of course the Protestant groups nandito ngayon. Parang yun ang definition ng tinatawag na settler communities. Hindi kami, yung roots talaga namin ay hindi galing dito sa Mindanao, galing sa iba yung dagat. But then, because of the national program during the time of Magsaysay, nagkaroon ito ng opportunity for the Christian communities coming from there. At dito, nabuo ang community, nabuo ang pamilya. Kaya nandito na, naging part na kami ng territory na ito with our Muslim brothers and sisters.
Oo, Father, bilang pagpapatuloy, gusto kong ihayag mo naman doon sa ating mga taga-subaybay. Ano ba yung nilalaman, yung programa nitong ating yung settler community, yung para sa ating
yung
mga settlers?
provision para na galing po doon sa sa administrative law natin, Father. Kasi parang din siya, parang is it not self-serving na nilagay ninyo yung doon, yung provision na yon para sa settler communities? Are we not including the Muslim brothers and sisters also that we have within the community? Paano magtatrabaho po yun?
Una sa lahat, sa struktura ng opisina na ito, ang opisinang ito ay mula doon sa executive and legislative power of the chief minister. Attached, ito siya doon. And then, ang nature ng opisina na ito ay coordinating body siya. Coordinating body from the office of the chief minister papunta dito sa opisinang ito, and also the same is true with the other ministries and agencies of the government of the day. Ngayon, as defined dito sa kanyang mga tasks and responsibilities, ang prime na kliyente niya ay ang settler communities. Yun ang mandato. Kaya we try as much as possible, kasi naging part ako ngayon sa preparation ngayon dito sa opisina na ito. Mayroon kaming 4 na programa. Ang programang ito, una sa lahat ay ang cultural relations. Gusto pa rin namin na ipagpatuloy pa rin yung aspect ng interreligious dialogue, but not only that one, we want it to be somehow wider ang scope natin, no? Wider ang scope natin, cultural, no? Dahil tribe people tayo dito. So isa yan sa malalawakang programa na gusto naming i-develop. And then pangalawa, ang economic empowerment, no, ng community. Economic empowerment, so through the help of this office, na of course, no, magkakaroon ito ng corresponding budget, no? Accordingly, dahil yan man din ang mandato, so pwede nating makascade yung mga programang ito hanggang doon sa kaduluduluhan ng mga barangays natin. Pangalawa, as next one is community empowerment. Community empowerment, ito yung mga plano na dapat lubos na maintindihan ng community kung ano yung gobyerno para sa kanila. Kasi nga, Christian community ito, nandun pa yung prejudice, may pa yung bias. Hindi lubos na naintindihan ng Christian community kung ano yung role nila dito sa government na ito. Para sa kanila, parang outsider pa rin sila. So, walang mangyayari kung ganun ang attitude. Kaya part ito ng ating, ginagawa nating advokasya, na dapat alam ng Christian community na here is a good chance, no, for us. Binigyan na tayo ng part ngayon ng government of the day to be to see, no, the inclusivity, no, of this government, dahil nandyan ang settler communities to journey now with the government called Bangsamoro. At ang pangatlo natin ay ang economic empowerment. Ano ba yun? Economic empowerment. Yun siya. Social welfare. Social welfare. Kasi alam naman natin na vulnerable talaga yung communities dito. Sa ground, it can be sometimes man-made calamity or natural calamity. So mayroon tayong gano'n na provision doon sa plano natin na immediate kaagad magkakaroon ng response. No? Ang opisina na ito doon sa mga basic needs, no, ng mga vulnerable communities natin in time na hindi naman natin dinadasal, pero in time na magkakaroon ng mga ganitong mga massive displacement, no, sa ating community. So yun ang 4 na main task na ngayon gusto naming ma-set up na yan. We are just simply starting, and we hope we can start even ngayong fiscal year ngayon. Almost aabot na tayo sa 4th quarter, but we hope and pray our good leader, Sir Edgar Ramirez, nandiyan siya ngayon. Alam ko nakikinig siya, at of course ang hanay ng Christians for Peace Movement nandito ngayon. Ang Office for Settler Communities, no, binabating ko kayo diyan lahat, ang team, no, nandiyan. Nanonood kayo ngayon, at ito ngayon ay pinapahayag natin kung ano yung ating gustong mangyari, no, bilang tayo nagbubuo ng kupunan na ito para sa ating community dito sa Central Mindanao.
Father, curious lang ako. Kasi di ba ito, sabi ninyo, katulad ng pag-usapan natin kanina dun sa meeting, no, in-establish pa lang yung para dito sa ating settlers community. Sa tingin mo, Pads, ano yung strategy ninyo para at least yung sinasabi nga ni Jean kanina, na talagang makita ng mga tao ng settlers community na talagang sincero tayo, no, doon sa talagang kasi yung tanong ko kanina nga, Pads, no, saan yung mga lumad sa lahat ng ito, from ARM to BARRM, no? So, paano natin may ensure nga na itong ating ginagawa ngayon, ay itong ating organization na kinabibilangan mo at ni Sir Edgar Ramirez ay talagang susulong, no, nung karapatan ng mga settlers communities.
So, una sa lahat, ang first approach na ginagawa namin ngayon ay kinakapacitate namin yung aming mga sarili. Kami na ma-involve dito sa gawaing ito, dapat magkaroon kami ng one heart and one mind, one direction. Kaya unang ginawa namin, nagkaroon kami ng organizational development. 3 days na conference together with the UNDP and the CRS, no, sila ang tumulong sa amin for capacity building. Para ma-enhance namin yung aming pag-iisip, yung aming mga damdamin, na kami lahat na mga worker dito sa opisina will have a common direction. Kasi alam naman natin kung magkakaibang yung interest natin, hindi magagawa yung yung gusto natin, yung goal natin at the end of the day. Pangalawang approach na gagawin namin ay magkakaroon pa kami ng intensive na talagang capacity building doon sa tinatawag naming direction setting. Kailangan naming malaman kung saan itong tinatawag nyo kanina, Ma'am Lynn, LOMAD, no? Saan yan sila dito sa area sa buong BARRM. Kailangan naming i-profile kung saan yung mga majority Christian community namin doon sa buong BARRM na ito. Alamin namin yan. Kung saan silang mga barangay, saan silang mga munisipyo. At least klaro sa amin na once na malaman namin itong profile na ito, alam namin kung saan pupunta itong 4 na programa na ito. 4 na programa na ito, and with that approach, anyway, developmental ang approach na ito, and we are asking for more guidance coming from our principal, like our good Cardinal, Archbishop, of course, Angelito Lampon, nandun siya ngayon sa coastal area namin, wala siya nandito. And of course, with the help also of the Bishop of the Episcopal Church, si Bishop Ernemoral. Bishop, good evening dyan. And of course, with the leaders of the Episcopal Evangelical community. Actually, baka nandyan sa Manila ngayon, nakikinig si Dr. Aldrin ng Evangelical Church. Ito yung mga principals namin. And of course, with the help also of other sectors, we are open for suggestion. Kami naman, of course, this is a government work, iba yung bureaucracy na ginagawa dito sa gawaing ito, and we want to learn the process. We want to learn the process. We don't want to impose our own, kasi alam natin may legal mandate ang usaping ito, and we want to be transparent, and we want to really implement programs for the good of the community. Yun lang, ang sa amin is we want to create an impact. We want our community to feel that there is a government now para sa kanila, and through the office of the settler communities na ito, and with the guidance of yung aming overarching structure ngayon ay ang Christians for Peace Movement. Yan talaga institutional group yan all over BARRM. Meron kaming mga grupo nandun sa island areas, sa Basilan, dun sa Hulo, andiyan yan sila sa Marawi, andiyan yan sila, nakikinig kayo dyan, hi dyan sa inyong lahat. Kasama kayo dito. Kasama tayo dito, at ito ngayon, pinapanood tayo dito sa buong Pilipinas, sa mga DSACs natin all over the Philippines. And of course, open ito sa international audience natin. Of course, pwede naman itong naka-record at pwede itong panoorin later. Kung depende kung paano nyo binabahagi or sinishare yan sa inyong mga Facebook at saka Messenger.
Jing, parang hindi busy si Father, At Father, gusto kong malaman, like ngayon pumapasok na tayo sa election period, papaano mo nababalanse yung oras, papaano yung pagmamanage dun sa ating social action, and then nandito ka pa dito sa peace building. Paano yung ginagawa mo, Father?
Napakagandang tanong, dahil nga nakikita ko yung very close na connection ng social action work na ito at itong bagong task ngayon sa peace building. And of course, biniyayaan tayo ng isang pagkakataon na talagang mayroong office na really mandated by the government to operate on actually the nature of the office is more or less very social action ang nature. Kaya nga initially na pag-usapan natin kanina during our conversation, na pwede magkaroon ng parang engagement, yung ating DSAC, yung 6 na DSAC natin with the NASA and in the office, magkakaroon siya kasi almost parallel yung ating concern doon sa ground. Ako naman, as much as possible, basta humihinga, alam na iwas-iwas lang sa COVID, mabigyan ng pagkakataon na ito mayroong social action work na concern with the help of course of the NASA, Caritas Philippines. May ongoing tayong project ngayon, a scholarship program. 50 yung scholars natin, sinusustain natin yan. Tribe people, ang ating kliyente. May Muslim tayo, may Christian tayo, may Catholic tayo, mayroon tayong IP. And then, aside from that, mayroon tayong kapamilya at feeding program na sinusustain natin yung pagpapakain doon sa pamilya ng scholars mismo. And of course, ang donor natin ay ang ating nasa Caritas Philippines, no, sa programang yan. Kaya alam ko na nabibigyan ko rin niya ng panahon, well at the same time, parallel to that ay itong mga usaping ito. And then ito may bago ngayon dahil darating ang election. Of course, no, meron na namang naka-pipeline na mga schedule, no, doon sa mga national and ito regional na mga conferences, no, tungkol doon sa pinupush ng PPCRB o na political education at saka doon sa mga technical side, no, ng itong gagawin na election by May 2022 dahil alam natin na ito ngayon will be operated by machine and of course as a PPCRB group, no, arm, no, direct arm ng ating election COMELEC, no, alam natin kung paano ginagawa ng machine yung mga ganun na mga usapin, no, tungkol dito sa election natin.
Oo, kaya naman Father, sa dami ng trabaho mo, pasalamatan mo yung mga staff and volunteers dito sa Cotabato. Sige Father, i-shout out mo naman sila.
Ay, andyan pa kayo, nakantay pa kayo dyan sa baba. Oo. So maraming salamat actually. Itong mga staff ko naman na ito, yan, nandyan sila and ever willing, no, to give their time, no, their talent and resources. Despite na sometimes sa aming mga limited na resources din, no, dito para sa kanila, but then they are there and they are also very much inspired, no, knowing na mayroon silang natutulungan, no, ng mga vulnerable communities sa ground. Yun lang ang hashtag namin sa opisina namin. Kahit minsan medyo kulubot ang noo, pero happy lang, no? Yan ang hashtag. Every time na mayroon akong communication sa aming page, no, always sinasabi ko doon sa baba, happy lang, no? Basta happy lang. So yun ang parang source of inspiration namin. Nandiyan sila and we are working well, no, with them and hopefully in the coming days and in coming years na ito, mayroon pa rin mga progress na mga effort na pwedeng mangyari sa aming ginagawa dito sa social action.
Oo, pasalamatan natin, Jing, di ba? Sila, ang mga staff niya talagang nag-welcome talaga sa atin dito sa Archdiocese ng Cotabato. Siyempre, si Ate Joy, no? Si Pat, si Tita Ning, si Tita Emma, at kanyang husband na si Kuya Jerry, si Tatay Jerry. And syempre si Josa, no? Si Kuya JR, yan. So, ayan, hello sa inyo dyan.
At saka maraming salamat talaga, Father. Of course, kasi I think one of the things that we wanted also at Caritas Philippines is to really understand yung mga local context ng ating mga social action centers. And this episode in particular ng ALAY KAPWA sa Caritas Philippines is very enlightening, lalong-lalo na we wanted to really have kahit na hindi full grasp, pero at least have a meaningful idea din nung mga nangyayari, especially na ito yung mga issue na talagang hinaharap natin sa social action, 'di ba? So again, Father, maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon na ito.
Oh, sige.
Kunting lang sa ALAY KAPWA,
may pahulong.
Only to realize pala na itong collection natin ng ALAY KAPWA natin sa mga stores na nilalagay natin, ang mga contributors diyan ay hindi lamang mga Christian, hindi lamang mga Katoliko, even the Muslim communities, yung mga simple na mga chains nila galing diyan sa South Seas, for example, ay hinihulog nila doon sa ating kunting collection. At naging kabahagi sila doon sa ALAY KAPWA campaign natin. At binabalik naman natin yan sa kanila in times of calamity, in times of pandemic ngayon. Yung mga kindness station natin dito, yung mga ayuda system natin, ay galing yun sa ALAY KAPWA. Kami lang, collecting body lang kami, pero yun binabalik natin doon sa ground na yun ang immediate na tinutulong natin sa kanila. Yun ang ALAY KAPWA natin dito sa Cotabato.
Jing, gusto lang natin ipaalala sa ating mga taga-subaybay na dito natin, bago pa man tayo nag-ALAY KAPWA Stewardship Program, yung ating year-round campaign sa ALAY KAPWA, dito natin pinilot, no, yung ating Project Saksi, yung Piso ALAY KAPWA dito sa Archdiocese of Cotabato. Sila yung unang tumanggap ng ating hamon. At sabi nga ni Father, no, hindi lang Kristiyano yung talagang nagdodonate, pati yung ating mga kapatid na mga Muslim. So yan. At bago tayo matapos din, pasalamatan din ang ating Vicar General, no, si Father Ben. Ayan, si Monsignor Ben. And also si Father Mario.
Father, naririnig ka po, Father. May
Naririnig ka.
microphone ka po sarili.
Father, kahit di mo ibulong, talagang papasalamatan ko sila. Makakalimutan ba naman natin and also si Father Tony, no, yung ating dating Vicar General. Talagang gusto ko rin pasalamatan si Father Tony Pieo, no, kasi siya din yung naging instrumental din, di ba, Father Clifford, para talagang maisakatuparan natin yung ating piso Alay Kapwa dito sa Archdiocese ng Cotabato. So maraming salamat sa inyo, sa ating mga kaparaan dito sa Archdiocese of Cotabato.
Yes, it really pays kapag suportado ng buong diocese yung ating mga programa sa social action dahil sabi nga doon sa ngayong World Day for the Poor, isa sa mga gusto nating i-take note also, no, sabi ng Caritas Internationalis, yung Caritas, yung ating social action at the heart of the Catholic Church will parang mawawala yung heart, yung pusong yun kapag nawala din yung ginagawa, yung mga gawain ng social action po. Kaya maraming salamat doon sa suportang ibinibigay ninyo sa lahat ng social action centers natin sa buong Kapuluan. Thank you very much. And again, yung ating pag-uusap po ngayon, nakasentro talaga doon sa ano ba yung naging contributions ng Catholic Church doon sa ginagawa nating mga peace-building efforts, lalong-lalo na po dito sa Mindanao. And because most of the time kasi pinag-uusapan natin yung interreligious, ecumenical, pero we haven't really focused on yung mismong simbahang Katoliko, ano ba yung ginawa natin, itinulong natin para dito. And we're just so honored na makasama natin kanina si Cardinal Quevedo and then now Father Clifford at maipaliwanag sa atin ng mga bagay-bagay na ito at nang matulungan din tayo na to reflect also sa atin, lalong-lalo na dun sa mga lugar na merong mga Muslim, pinag-uusapan yung peace building. At hindi lamang ito doon sa mga Muslim communities natin, may mga peace building issues din tayo sa iba't ibang parte ng bansa. Pwede din natin, we can reflect on the insights, yung sharing na binigay sa atin kanina ng ating dalawang bisita upang mas palalimin pa talaga yung efforts na ginagawa natin on this. Kaya maraming salamat po sa pagsama sa amin sa isang oras at mahigit dito sa ating programa Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines. Sa pangalan po ng aming National Director na si Bishop Jose Colin Bagaforo, grabe, nakikita ko yung parang nostalgic. Nakikita ko
dami yung pictures dito.
Nung siya pa ay bata, di ba? Ibang-iba pala, pero hindi nagbabago yung nunal. Anyway.
At syempre ang smile.
Yes. At sa pangalan din po ng aming Executive Secretary, si Father Tony Labiao, ako po si Jing Ray Henderson.
At ako naman po si Annalyn Juliano, sa pangalan po ng ating Direktor, si Kuya Sai, na nasa ating harapan at ating mga production staff, si Ate Zenny, si Eden, si Ate Maggie, si Ate Nelsie na nandiyan sa aking tagiliran. And also, sino pa ba ang nakalimutan ko, Jing? Baka may makalimutan ako, si Kuya Arto. Yan, no?
Hi, kay
Ayan.
Eden.
So, maraming salamat po. Kahit sila ay hindi namin kasama dito, sila pa rin ay
Kuya
tumutulong
Elmer.
yan, si Kuya Elmer ng ating piloto, no? At lagi po nating tatandaan, sabi ni Cardinal Quevedo kanina, yung peace process, yung peace building, hindi lamang ito among the Christian and the Muslim, no? Between the Christian and the Muslim. Sabi niya, no, kahit sa ating mga sariling tahanan, no, dapat meron tayong dialogue of life, yung respect, understanding, and syempre, pag may understanding, meron na tayong pagmamahalan. Kaya tandaan po natin, no, ang ating kapwa ay ating pananagutan. Kaya lagi po nating ipagpatuloy ang ating pagmamalasakit,
pagbabahagi,
at pag-aalay kapwa.
2021 is proving to be another year of trepidation, but the Catholic Church, through Caritas Philippines, is bringing you more reasons to be hopeful because we are leaving no one behind. Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines, the stewardship program of Caritas Philippines responding to 9 priority actions, our manifestation of being gifted to give here at Caritas Philippines Facebook page. Alay Kapwa sa Caritas Philippines.